Hello and welcome to this week's installment of Developer Skill Sprints, focusing on modernizing your VCL applications with RadStudio XC7. My name is Brian Alexakis and I am a Product Marketing Manager here at Embarcadero Technologies. Today we will be focusing on extending your VCL apps to mobile, gadgets, and wearables. I'm going to show you a demo that will utilize the REST debugger and REST components to communicate and control a Philips Hue Luxe starter kit. We are now on the 8th and final week of this Skill Sprints series. Last week we covered web services integration with REST Client and REST Debugger to see how to consume the Twitter REST API. If you have missed any Skill Sprints from this series, or any other Skill Sprint series, you can always find the links to the replays at embarcadero.com/landing-pages/skill-sprints. In addition to finding the replays on YouTube, you can find all the links, videos, project files, and related question and answer follow-up information on my blog at embt.co/blog-com-brian. And again, you can find all of the Skill Sprint videos on our YouTube playlist channel at embt.co/skill-sprints-YouTube. RadStudio XC7 has great support for extending your VCL application to communicate with gadgets and wearables over many different communication protocols, whether it's over Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, or over a REST. The integrated wireless support works with thousands of off-the-shelf, consumer, and industry-specific devices. RadStudio's approach makes it easy to integrate virtually any device into the app user experience, and even support multiple device vendors with the same body of code. RadStudio XC7's integrated Bluetooth and Wi-Fi support is in the RTL and has easy-to-use components which enable developers to connect to any wireless and internet-connected gadget, sensor, or device. I've provided a lot of links on this screen, and I will certainly be displaying them again at the end of the presentation and also on my blog. With RadStudio XC7, you can now use the Bluetooth LE component to discover and interrogate the kind of information that you can consume from a given Bluetooth device. This is done using the Bluetooth Explorer. It will determine the kind of characteristics that are supported and what values you can read, what values you can write, and even without any kind of documentation from the device vendor, you can use the Bluetooth Explorer to sort of debug or discover what kind of information is available for the connected Bluetooth device. To get more information on how the new Bluetooth LE component works, I would first advise you to check out the doc wiki that has a bunch of examples that you can work through at embt.co/explore-btle-samples. There's also a video segment that I link directly to from Jim McKeith that also talks about the new Bluetooth LE component. You can find that at embt.co/xe7-VCL-live. New in XC6 and updated for XC7 is a technology called app tethering. It allows your VCL application to connect to another application, which could be running as a FireMonkey app in OS X or Android, or to another VCL app running in Windows. Data is sent between the connected apps, and it is even possible to execute actions from one application to another. App tethering is a way to extend existing desktop applications in VCL to mobile applications or other VCL applications. App tethering is possible over Wi-Fi, and now with XC7 also supports connections over Bluetooth. There are two components that enable app tethering: Tethering Manager and Tethering App Profile. The Profile component allows you to execute actions and exchange data. The manager component controls connections and discovers available tethered applications either over subnet, via Bluetooth, or added in XE7 manually specified IP address that can be outside the subnet. I've linked against a great video that we recently released. You can find the link at embt.co/VCL-app-tethering. And there's a lot of great information on the doc wiki as well at embt.co/xe7-app-tethering. In this demo, we will see how to use the REST debugger to explore the Philips Hue Luxe starter kit via the Philips Hue Rest Api. With the REST debugger, we can understand how to connect to, query, and control the Hue Luxe lights. Once we have a solid understanding of the Philips Hue Rest API, we can then use the REST debugger to generate REST components that we can just copy and paste directly into our application. So the REST debugger is a great way to prototype and rapidly build applications that need to connect to web services via a RESTful API. The Philips Hue Luxe starter kit consists of 2 Hue Luxe smart bulbs and 1 bridge device. The bridge device can manage up to 50 Hue bulbs at once. The bridge connects to your local network and is currently limited to local network access, although Philips is currently working on extending the REST API to provide access outside of the local network. The first step to communicating with the Hue Luxe light bulbs is to find the IP address of the bridge within the local network. This demo will utilize an HTTPS call to a discovery web-based service at https://www.meethue.com/API/NUPnP. This method requires that the connected app be running from the same network that the bridge is on. So let's go ahead and make this call from the REST debugger. If we copy the URL, we can just paste that into the URL field within a GET method and send the request. After a while, we see that the response is 200 OK, and if we examine the body, we will find the unique identification for the bridge as well as the internal IP address of the bridge. So we're going to go ahead and mark this. Go ahead and copy it. We're going to use this again in just a moment. It's also worth pointing out here that we can directly target the value pair here for the internal IP address within the root element. This is an array with 1 item in it, so we index into the first item in the array, and we can then say dot internal IP address. Oops, I can't type today. I'm just going to copy and paste. Oh, come on now. Okay, now I'm missing the period. There we go. And boom, there we go. So using this as the root element, which we're going to be doing in code later, we can get a handle directly to the IP address. Now that we have the internal IP address of the bridge, what can we do? Well, before you want to start trying to turn your lights on and off, you have to authenticate your application with the bridge. And this is done by creating a user. A user is created through the REST API. Let's go ahead and navigate to that portion. If we go to the Philips Hue API, Philips Hue API, in the configuration area, we can find create user. Before you actually call this REST API, you have to push a button on the bridge itself in order for the device to accept a new user. Once a new user is accepted, it is added to a whitelist and only needs to occur just once. So let's see what happens if we try to make this call without pushing the button first. So I'm going to change this, of course, to a post. And now that we have the IP address, we can copy this and put it into the URL field. And since we are calling the API, all we have to do is go to the parameters resource and go /API. And now in the custom body, we can throw in the sample code that is given here. Okay, and let's see what happens when we make this. Oh, unknown content type. Oh, we have to change this since we're sending JSON data. Okay, so here we can see that the command was processed, but the whitelist action was denied. It was an error because the link button was not pressed. So if we clear out the root element here, we can get a better view of what this looks like. Again, this is a single element, and if we say error, then we can again we can address the description, for example, and get a handle directly to the error text. This again we will be using within the application code. Since this is just a demo, I'm going to leave the body example JSON blob intact. We're going to want to keep note of this username for our code. We're going to need to invoke that later. Obviously, if you go to deploy your own application, you're going to want to make this unique to your own development setup. Now let's go ahead and see what happens if I do push the button. I just pushed it, and I send the request again. And let's take out the root element once more. We can see now that we have a success within the JSON blob, so I can test upon whether the authentication was successful or not by again indexing into the first element here and saying, hey, is there a success parameter? There is. And then what is the returned username that got registered? And there it is, 12345678990. Now that our user is authenticated, we can begin querying the device and discover the lights that are connected to it. I'm going to go ahead and navigate to the API documentation that talks about how to get all the lights. We can see here that the URL is as such, and it contains the username that we inputted earlier here. So I'm going to copy that, change the tab to the parameters, and update the resource to include the username and lights. We're going to change the method to get, and that should be it. If we send the request, one thing I will note about the REST debugger is if you see the JSON blob spaced out like this, sometimes if you even if it's blank, if you just come into the root element and go delete enter, it'll then refresh and properly space out everything. So this call, as you can see, was successful, and it found the first light, and if we scroll down, we can see that there's a second light. One thing to note is that under state, a very important parameter is reachable. Well, the Philips Hue Luxe starter kit ships with 2 Luxe bulbs, and they are already registered with the bridge out of the box. Currently, I only have one of the 2 lights plugged in, so this one is reachable, but if we scroll down, we can look at number 2 and its state, and you can see that it is not reachable. So if we want to use the JSON root element here to kind of splunk through the JSON blob, we can check the first light that was discovered. They're indexed beginning with 1, and they're not in an array, they're actually just labeled as a property within the blob. So you say 1 dot, or just 1, for example. This will give us the first light discovered. We can go to number 2, takes us to the second light discovered, and if we do 3, that's gonna be an error because there is no third light. Let's go ahead and take a look at light 1 again, and let's see if we do .state.reachable, it is true. If we go to light 2, .state.reachable, it is false. Okay, so that pretty much covers how to query the lights that are connected to your bridge. What about turning the lights on or off? Well, that has to do with setting the light state. So let's actually query it first. Okay, great. So if we look at the URL variables here, we can go to the parameters tab and we can query the first light. This is going to be a get, and so let's go ahead and just send that over. And again, we're going to reset our display type here, and as you would expect, we get back that same JSON blob targeted to specifically light number 1. If we further wanted to determine whether it is on or off, we can just look at the parameters under state. This first one is currently on, and it's set at nearly maximum brightness. By the way, the brightness goes between 0 and 255. If we actually wanted to toggle the state, instead of get, we're going to use set light state. Okay, so let's convert this into our resource parameter list here. So if we go lights, let's say 1, and then state, we're going to change method back to a put, and we can just kind of reference, usually they have an example type here, exactly, body example here. So this is really quite straightforward. We're just going to turn it off by saying on : false. And if I execute this, you can't see anything, but you can take my word for it that indeed the light very gracefully faded into an off state. The response from the RESTful API indicates that it was a success in turning the light state on to false. So this is cool. We're using the REST debugger to control the light now. Let's go ahead and just extend this a little bit by saying, maybe we want to turn the light on, true, and set the brightness to only maybe a value of 50, which would be very low. I'm going to send that out. And again, we have a success. Each parameter that we set has its own grouping, so we can see that it was successfully turned on, and the brightness is very low. So now that we've seen how the REST debugger can be used to familiarize oneself with the Philips Hue Rest API, we can now use it to generate the REST components for use within our application. I've set the REST debugger back into a state for the authentication layer. If I hit send request, you can see that it's complaining that the link button was not pressed. So I can just copy the components here, and it will let me know that they're in the clipboard now. I can go into RAD Studio, and here's the application that we're going to dig into. I've already pasted the set of components for the authentication layer. The flow for this application begins at the authentication layer. If we peek into our code for this application, at the point of entry, it calls the initialization function, and the username is set as such. If I now I've already run this application during development and have already done the authentication, but if I change this to some unique value and then run it, and pause while we wait, you'll see that at the discovering lights phase that it reported an unauthorized user. If I push the authentication button, it is erroring out and is asking us to press the link button. So I'm going to press the link button and then push the authentication button, and now we can see that all the lights were found and are reachable, and that we were able to query the light and see what the brightness value is. I can then select here and tell the light to turn off, which it just did. I can tell the light to turn back on, and I can adjust the brightness with this slider here. I can also change which light I am targeting. Now, if you remember, as before, the second light in the system was recognizable, but it is not targetable. So I have set some very basic UI state logic to lock the UI so that when you select a light that is not reachable, you can't change any of its properties. Again, if I switch back to the light, I can then again set its values. Okay, the first thing that happens in the application logic is the bridges are discovered. And this is done by executing the find bridge REST component that was copied and pasted similar to the authentication REST components from the REST debugger itself. After the execution is completed, we use a static cast to get a handle to the JSON data, and we just query how many bridges were found. And I'm going to skip over getting into the details of this, but once one or more bridges were found, update base URL gets called, which sets the current selected bridge, and after that is completed, it moves on to discovering the lights. After it discovers the lights, it basically repeats a similar process where we have this generic set of Hue Rest components. This is a get action, so we set it to get. The base URL is always updated whenever, let's see here, the updated base URL is as such. So this, again, if you think back to our REST debugger, which we can just open up really quick, we have the HTTP, the IP address, and then the parameter as /API. So this sets the base URL for any REST call. We just simply will append to the end of it, the specific API. So, for example, if we go back to handle find lights, here you can see that the resource is the base URL here plus the username, and then the API call, in this case lights. We execute the command, and again we static cast a JSON object, and we can test whether there were any lights found or not. And again, this is tracing back to our REST debugger from earlier. I'm going to skip through some of this stuff. This code will be available as a project download in the blog notes, which I will link to, of course, at the end of the presentation. So after the lights are found, we want to check and make sure that there's a proper authentication. So here we can see the JSON blob that is used for authentication translated into C++, incorporating the variable of the username. Every REST command that is sent out gets echoed to the memo for tracing. And let's see, what else is there to highlight here? Whenever a light is selected, the state is queried and the UI is updated to reflect the JSON data that gets sent back. And here we have handle lights on off, so when a light is turned on or off with the UI, here we are setting the JSON blob for the put command to say, hey, we want to affect the state on, and we want to either set it to true or false, depending upon whether the light combo box item is selected, either the first item or the second item. And lastly here, this is a very quick overview, but we have the handle brightness, which is connected to the brightness track bar. And whenever that is adjusted, if the UI is enabled, the Hue Rest component is set to a put type. And again, we are updating the resource to the username, and then lights, which light, what do we want to do? We want to affect the state. And then we affix the JSON body here, so we are adding that brightness as we showed in the REST debugger, and then we're pulling the value for that parameter out of the track bar and taking its position. Then we execute it, and we let the UI know that we sent that command. So that is a whirlwind tour of this application. I skipped over a lot of stuff, but again, I would advise you to check out the project files, and you can explore it for yourself. Thank you for joining me this week and during my Skill Sprint series. I hope my videos have been educational for you, but if you have missed anything during the course of the Skill Sprint, please visit my blog at embt.co/blog-com-brian. This week has had a lot of links to videos and doc wikis that I didn't really get into the detail that I usually do, but I'm going to be adding much more information about these links and more at my correlated blog post for this week's Skill Sprint. I hope you have a wonderful holiday, and I will now turn the discussion over to Q&A.
Hello everybody. I'm joined today by David I. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Holidays, Season's Greetings, Happy Kwanzaa, Happy Festivus, if you saw the Jerry Seinfeld show.
Yes. So there aren't any questions so far. I would like to let everybody know that I have yet to get the blog post up for this week's skill sprint, but I will certainly have that by the end of the day. So please do check out the blog post. I'm going to put a lot more information about app tethering and a bunch of other good stuff. There's been a lot of great content coming out for VCL that I'm going to highlight as well.
And you also mentioned that you have both Object Pascal and C++ demos of the REST calls, right?
Yeah, so the Object Pascal version of the Hue I was referring to was the demo that you built earlier this year. That was for the Hue, and not the Hue Luxe.
Oh, the Hue Light, the color one, sure.
Yeah,
No problem.
that's
Yeah.
what I was going to link against.
Yeah, cool.
Okay, looks like we have a question from Troy. Is there a way to integrate this function into the IDE?
Well, the ID comes with an API, so if I'm not sure if he's talking about the REST debugger. The REST debugger is already hooked into the tools transfer menu. So if you bring up the exe7 IDE, and I think even back to exe5 when REST first appeared, if you look at the tools menu, there's the bitmap style designers there and also the REST debuggers there. So it's pretty cool to be able to do the testing, spelunking of these REST APIs, hit copy of the clipboard, switch to your form, and paste the components in. So that's for the REST debugger. I'll type that in. Troy, if that's what you're talking about, if it's something else that you like integrated, you know, as a window versus an external tool transfer, but
Yeah, Troy, perhaps if you're speaking about actually integrating with, for example, the Hue Bridge device directly, well, that would be something that is a specific API to just Hue, and all the different web services, they all have different API standards, so that's not something that would be integrated, if that's what you're referring to.
And Roger asked what minimum version or level edition of exe7 is the REST debugger, and I know it's in the professional and above. The REST components are part of the professional as well, because you might be talking to devices like this and so on. So just a reminder, though, for everybody as well, maybe you already said this, Brian, if you're not on exe7, there's a countdown timer on the RAD offer page, embarcadero.com/RAD offer. It's counting down the hours, minutes, and seconds to get the update pricing. If you have any older version, going back to Delphi and CBuilder 1, also for people that may have stopped at exe2, for Delphi, for example, when December 31st ends, exe2 will no longer be available for update pricing starting January 1st. So if you're on exe2 and before, now's the time to get to exe7 and get all of this great functionality that Brian has been showing over the last 8 weeks for VCL, and then you get everything for multi-device development as well. So if you've got old versions, go to RAD offer page and order before the countdown timer ends.
So
last chance. Good stocking stuffers. You get a lot of good goodies, ebooks and other things as well.
So for anybody who may have missed last week, we used the REST debugger to communicate with the Twitter API. So in the meantime, while I get this video ready, I would urge you to go review that one as well. It has some great stuff for the REST debugger.
Yeah, the REST client library supports doing the OAuth 1 and OAuth 2 authentication. If you're talking to a service or device that needs something special. These lights, it's just straight REST calls. There's no, other than the parameters that you pass, there's no other special things to do. But if you want to talk to Twitter or Facebook or Google Docs, Google Calendar, Google Tasks, all those kinds of things, whether it's a device or it's a service, the REST components come in real handy. And the debugger, REST debugger, is a great way to look at things when you don't have a lot of documentation. You can just try things, pass values, and see what happens.
Yeah, a lot of things in the are driven by REST as well. So maybe like wearables, the Fitbit.
Yeah.
A lot of devices all are exposed at a RESTful API.
And Roger, thanks for enjoying the skill sprints. I should mention we're working on skill sprints for the coming year for Q1. I think the last schedule date I remember is to have them start around the 20th of January. Let me look at my calendar here at home. If that's a Tuesday, yeah, that's a Tuesday. So give us a couple weeks of holidays and end of year selling that we're doing to help people spend budget money they have left before the end of the year on our products and get everybody updated so we can start out the new year 2015 with everybody being on XE 7 release. So yeah, it looks, if I remember correctly, we're going to start up the skill sprints again on January 20th. That's a Tuesday, and you'll all get emails. We will be blogging with the schedule and everything else. So everybody have a great holidays, Christmas, New Year, and all of that. If you're in the Northern Hemisphere, stay warm and well. If you're in the Southern Hemisphere, just a reminder to wear your sunblock during your summer, if any of you are on late at night. And we'll see you in the new year. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you, David. I'll leave the forum open for a few more moments if any other questions come in. But otherwise, it has been a pleasure, and I appreciate you all showing up today. Happy holidays.
And it uses the REST components and library, and you can enhance it if you think it needs something else. Add capability. You can, if you want a Macintosh version, I did this for JT, you wanted a Mac version, I just took the source code, copied it to a directory because I couldn't build with UAC turned on in the program files directory where it is. Just copy the whole folder of the source code for the REST debugger and somewhere else and just build it. You can build a 64-bit version. You can build a Mac version. It is a desktop kind of application. I think I could probably even build one for an iPad. That would be enough screen real estate, I think, based on the layout. So you have the source code. Take a look at it. It's another good example, besides all the other great examples, including the ones that Brian's going to put in his blog.
Yeah, speaking of that, I have not yet posted this week's blog, but I will be doing so after this webinar. So expect that by the end of today. In fact, sooner than that, which should be in the next hour or so.
Be a nice Christmas gift.
Yeah, and I'm going to be linking against a lot more information in addition to the links that I have on the screen now. We've got some holiday greetings from Richard. He expresses a sentiment that the seminars are fantastic and to give us all happy holidays at Embarcadero Geek Guys. So same to you, Richard. Happy holidays.
And we're taking a short break. We're going to, looks like in the current planning, we're going to start up again on January 20th, which is a Tuesday. So give us a little time. We're building a whole nother complete set of topics, lots of topics to take us into the new year. We'll let everybody who's registered for all of these series, we've done 3 series now this year, starting back in May, skill sprints, and we'll let all of you know, and we'll be blogging. Brian will be blogging, I'll be blogging to tell everybody about the next series for Q1 in 2015. So stay tuned to Brian's blog and all of our blogs and the community calendar on community.embarcadero.com, and you'll you'll see even more short skill sprints on very defined topics.
And if you think we've been geeky this year, just wait till 2015.
Oh, yeah. Next, take it to the next level. And also send us emails. I mean, Brian's email, post comments on the blog about topics you'd love to see us cover. You can always send me a message, and then I'll forward them to Brian and everybody. David I at Embarcadero.com, because I can't spell Alexakis. It took me a while to remember how to pronounce it.
Yeah, it's not easy.
But in any case, send us ideas that you want. We've got a pretty full schedule, I think, looking at a lot of the topics, but we can always do more.
Great. Did you want to comment on the time left to the upgrade to XE7?
No. Yeah, I will. Sorry. Rad offer. If you're not on XE7, raise your hand. There's a little raise your hand thing in the go-to webinar. We'll see if you're really paying attention out there. Raise your hand if you're not on XE7. And I want to tell you that there's, the time is running out on Embarcadero.com/rad offer. There's a countdown timer. It's really cool. It's one of those flipping digits thing like you see in the airports, and so on, or that you see on the in the Disney World and Disney properties Fast Pass rides. The Fast Pass system is built in Delphi, the whole back-end system. So you get to see your countdown timer to your next ride on the really high volume human rides at the Disney parks. So that's the amount of time you have left to upgrade and get upgrade pricing, especially for those of you that are on XE2 or earlier. XE2 or earlier, the time runs out end of December. And after that, you'll have to pay full price. So XE3, you're still in that upgrade cycle. XE4, you're in that upgrade cycle. You're on XE2 and older, you've got till that countdown timer hits 0, the end of the human day, whatever that means, depending on where you're on the planet Earth, December 31st, 2014. So after that, full price. So now's the time. And it's a great stocking stuffer. Or if you and your company have end of your budget that you got to burn through, or you lose it, spend it on cool developer tools. And you get all the goodies. Castelia for Delphi, the premium styles and so on. Let's see. Institute budget is empty. Okay, well, then, maybe someone can donate some money to your institute, and you can use that money before the end of the year to upgrade. In any case, okay, let's see. There's suggestion on MVVM. We've done a couple MVVMs. Malcolm Groves did MVVM with Delphi, and I think it was Code Rage 7. And Nick Hodges talked about MVVM in his Coding in Delphi February of 2014. So if you're interested in MVVM, we'll look at more of MVVM for 2015. But look at Malcolm Groves' MVVM. Just go to his blog, malcolmgroves.com. I think it is MALCOLM, Malcolm Groves, GROVES.com. Or just search Malcolm Groves MVVM. You'll find his blog post with source code and his Code Rage talk. And also, again, Nick's Coding in Delphi webinar from February of this year. He talks about MVVM as well. And let's see. But there... Use both, but there is a need for users. Why change and how to change old code? Okay, so excellent. Let's see. Richard is saying, do you think you should provide seminars for outside vendors such as Fast Report or TMS Component? Yes. Good suggestion, Richard. We've had our tech partners as part of Code Rage. We call them sort of vendor showcase sessions. We didn't put that tag on Code Rage 9, but we had Nick Hodges and his FireMonkey Radiant Shapes. He showed that. We had Nostus showing their PDF support for mobile, and we had Boyan Mitov. Mitov Software has a whole bunch of great components for FireMonkey for doing signal processing and animation and other things. So I think it's a great suggestion, Richard, to have some weekly tech partner online events for people to see what our partners are doing and how you can do even more Well, we did have fast report in Code Rage 9 as well. But how our tech partners are building their components and allowing you to build applications. I know when I did my modernizing VCL in part 1, part 2. In part 2, I used the TMS Cloud Pack to get to my Google Calendar. They've got pre-built components for Dropbox, Google Docs, Twitter, Twitter, and so on, where you drop a component down, set some properties, handle the events, and you don't have to write all that code. Although Brian showed you last week how to use the REST components to get to Twitter and how to do authorization and so on. So we're showing it to you in multiple ways, how you can do it yourself with the libraries that we provide and how to use the components. But that's a great suggestion, Richard, about getting more of our tech partners doing short skill sprints as well.
Last week's skill sprint about the Twitter API is up for replay, and you can find the links to that at my blog, as well as a lot more. Okay, We'll leave the questions open for a few more minutes if anybody else wants to jump in. Otherwise, I wish you all a happy holiday, and thank you again for coming out and joining us for this skill sprint series.
Have a Merry Christmas. Stay warm and well if you're in the Northern Hemisphere. And as I always say, wear your sunblock if you're in the Southern Hemisphere. Take care, everybody. We'll see you in the new year online with skill sprints, hopefully starting Tuesday, January 20th. Stay tuned.